We'll just start with, I actually think, a fun team, which is, I keep telling people, I feel like the story of how the off-season unfolded in China has made people have all these really weird takes on teams because they started forming the team before the final five-man was known. So one of the teams I think this suits perfectly has got to be JDG. Because what's funny is, because the initial headline, before anyone even knew who it was rumoured it was Knight was going to leave, because the initial headline was they're not keeping the same five-man lineup, I'm pretty sure everyone collectively was like, oh, because everyone wanted to see them play more. And then I think a lot of people who didn't check back in on the LPL and haven't watched the split don't know, they actually ended up with a pretty banging lineup still. Like, they've still got a top roster and they're going to be in the mix and probably go to Worlds. Like, Nightmare, what do you think of the new JDG?
I mean, outside of the roster as well, another thing which I want to call out is that Martha's come in as coach. She's just three-peated the LCK. So you have the three-peat LPL champions with the three-peat LCK coach, which is obviously a pretty big thing. I think that Genji, under his coaching as well, did pretty well at adapting towards metas, and now they've hit the Rift as well. There's a lot of different systems in place, which I'm really impressed with, that JG have already shown. For those that don't know, there was a question whether Sheer would be playing a top lane or whether it would be Flandre. Obviously, Flandre, legendary Chinese top laner, the only Chinese solo laner to ever win World Championship. So he has ended up playing. Did Sheer even play a single series? I can't remember
think so.
They've only played the three.
Don't think so.
Now, there was a question about whether he was reported to the LPL for not being over 18, or whether there's been some weird stuff with his age. Now, JDG have put out a statement saying this is untrue and they're going to be protecting...
It wasn't negative gaming, guys. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But they said like they will take legal action over X, Y, Z, and whatever. So they've stuck to their guns. But still, Flandre has been the one that's playing. He came in a little bit cold, but he's been playing actually pretty well after that point too. And then, as much as this team is probably not as explosive as last year's roster in terms of, like the snap engages are probably not at the level as they were last year. I mean, Ruler is still an absolute tear. This team absolutely knows how to set up for the one key fight which will win them the game. And they're currently 3-0 in series, so that's done pretty well for themselves. And yeah, I mean, they took down LNG, who are another one of the top teams as well that we see. They're in a bit of a weird situation, don't get me wrong. But JDG, I am really surprised that people were so low down on them coming into this year. I still thought they'd be relevant. They have been. They've only played the 3 series, and it is before the Lunar New Year break as well. Things change quite wildly in LPL before and after the break, typically. But, they're still coming out 3-0. They're still coming out probably being the best Lucian team maybe in the world. I think definitely in the LPL. I think they're incredible at playing Lucian Nami, Lucian Milio. But this team has some huge strong points, and I'm quite surprised that some people are even dipping them to 4th. I have them top 3. I think this team is really legit.
Yes. Come on, Kira, jump in.
Yeah, what do you call it? The thing is and this is just a disappointing thing, the team could even still be in theory the best LPL team. The problem is it probably just won't be as good as the previous JDG. I don't care what it does for Kanavi in terms of their synergy. Yagao is just a worse player than Knight in almost every metric of the game in terms of Yagao has to play in specific ways for the best jungler in the world to make the team function. And you've also lost the specific prowess of 369. Now Flandre is an amazing great player of yesteryear, but I see him more co-signed to his ADG role, where he will majority of the time play a very isolated matchup style, and then when he can get specific picks, he will be able to flex those picks in a strong way, but he will not probably be the focus point of this team. The interesting thing is, for me, even though it's a very small sample, Kanavi and Ruler still look to have the best understanding of mid-game pressuring in terms of with leads and the ability to go find the opponent in 1v1s in midsection and pressure them. Ruler and Kanavi are still the best in the world, and that will just beat a lot of teams that just don't know what to do with pressure. I think NIP is a super skillful team. Photic did not know what to do under that pressure. Photic was just destroyed by Ruler, and he even resulted to the Caitlyn pick twice. Nightmare?
Yeah, it was Caitlyn twice. That was a bit weird, actually. I think it probably would have worked out more without the Caitlyn pick, but that just didn't help. They're a team which needs to get their priorities sorted out a little bit. But
and once Higuita was in the midsection, every single time Ruler had a chance to use the culling and dash forward on the Lucian, he was taking his head off. For me, this team still has 3 of the best pieces in the world for like three of the best pieces in the world for playing the style that they want to play. They have the best ADC. They have arguably the outright best jungler. They have the best like mid for enabling that jungler for like the longest period of time. And they have like one of the best supports for like playing their this specific way. I don't think
Missing's great at snapping gauges. Yeah,
yeah, like so. Yeah. And the good thing as well is like even if you move into enchanters, is like game doesn't fall to bits like loads of other like dedicated Rakan players do. So and like Missing can go as far as to play like the Ashe as well. So there's such a depth of understanding there for him that even though I think overall JDG will probably not be as great a team, I still think they'll be very, very strong contenders. And I don't think they will on like balance of probability, but I think they'll easily be like a top 3 team in the year. They're just going to probably be like winning the games in like a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think some people are referred to them as kind of going back to where it's not a complete copy-paste of how the team was with Yagao before the last year, before 2023, but it definitely feels like there's hallmarks of, well, the early game might have a couple of slip-ups here and there, but then it's just the one explosive fight which they've set up for. They're all fantastic team fighters, and they can find angles into fights very, very well. Yeah, I think this team's mid-game understanding is one of the best in the world right now. I think that... So I made a video on how I felt like the specific ways and how the West was failing on Lucian Nami as such a powerful duo that we've seen in LCK and LPL. And if I was going to give a textbook team of how you set up a mid game for like the 1 to 2 item spike of the Lucian anywhere in the world, it would actually be JDG. You have, the 3-man unit of Ruler, Missing, and then Kanavi walking into the enemy jungle, putting down a couple of wards, so Ruler knows he can jump forward with impunity. And as you said, against Photic, he didn't know how to play the game. And I think it's quite telling that when JDG face up against some of the really good AD carries, I mean, Gala had an absolute shocker versus JDG in their series too. He played the Lucian versus... I think it was the Varus Nautilus, and I was a little bit worried when they locked that draft in, thinking, well, if the Lucian gets to 1 item, we've seen what JDG can do with it, what will happen on the other side. They did a magnificent job of shutting Gala down. He's, of course, no slouch in himself. He's one of the better AD carries in the LPL. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about the strength, particularly around bot-centric metas when you've got these power spikes around bot lane. I really like how JDG have enabled those power spikes.
Yeah, the thing I actually find most interesting about this team is changing the soul in has completely changed the profile of the squad, like you say. Like, I actually think the other reason that essentially, I don't think I ever hit this hard enough when I was saying JDG last year were the best team ever, is the real reason I think they're the best team ever is there was so many games they were just behind in the game and then they would just team fight and win. And it's like, that essentially is like the hardest way to win in League of Legends. Like, that's not the way you would ever choose to build a team. And this JDG is nothing like that. Like, obviously, Yagao's strength is to roam and to do all sorts of shit and help the jungler. And if people don't know, Kanavi is, if he was unleashed last year, he's mega insanely unleashed. He can do whatever he wants, basically. Like, if you go watch the LNG, he was fucking smurfing in some of those games. Like his Xin Zhao is unbelievable when you watch like an LEC Xin Zhao comparison. So if you think about it, right, even though they had to lose the super team, it's not exactly much of a cynical move to go, wait a minute, we have still got the best jungler and best ADC in the world. There's a team here. And in fact, I'd even say if you're going to have a team that is like the best jungler and he's a carry jungler who wants to fucking roam all over the map at will, you probably actually, for him, it's probably better to have solos that are going to sort of cater to him. Whereas the joke is, I actually thought 369 intentionally limited his game for the whole team comp. And then Knight's just draft clearly sometimes played for the fucking jungler. So if anything, I actually think this is more like the team where it's just like, look, you might not like the way Worlds ended, but that if Kanavi plays at that, they have no chance. If Kanavi actually is who he is in the LPL, they could be one of the best teams in the world. They could probably win Worlds or Dark Horse. Like, the players that are good are mega. I even think the Flandre one's really interesting because that's just found money. Like, it's pretty obvious to me if you look at the scenario with the Shea guy, they do think he is the next stud and he is supposed to be like the next, like the shy level fucking prospect. The problem is he has this thing where is it that they can't trust him? Is he not old enough? No one knows yet. And so quite frankly, even when I saw that move, when I saw them announce 2 people, I was like, wait a minute, there's no way this is actually a Flandre signing because you know who Flandre is. This is more like we got Flandre just in case.
Like a positional coach. Like the rumor going around was that he was like a luxury positional coach, and obviously he stepped into the lineup and he's warmed up. But like, yeah, that was the overwhelming opinion because we saw Demacia Cup as well with shit. Yes. And it looked great.
No, he was mega. Yeah, he was
actually pretty good at that point. Yeah. But like Flandre was not expected to start, I don't think.
Yes. But I have to say, for someone that I don't think did come in thinking he's going to be a starter for, like I say, a team that could actually win World, mate, he's fucking good. He actually looks good. Like, and as I was saying, I actually think where he's at in his career, like if you know how he won Worlds, guys, it wasn't the fucking player that carried Snake like 7 years or earlier or whatever. Like, it's a totally different player. So, like, I actually think at the point in their career now, essentially these solo laners, they're also here for it. They've bought in, like, this is Kanavi and Ruler's team. And when you play to these players, yeah, you could be a really good team. Like, I'd certainly agree with you. They're top 3 for me. The easy as a lock. My question just is, are they top 2? Like, is it them and BLG's my main question? So that will obviously be determined as the split goes on. Right, I've got a quick question about this team though, which is this. Right, we've done a million, because we're all Knight fanboys on this show, right? We've done a million of those ones where we just essentially, like Kira did there, instead of going, Yagao is a multiple-time LPL champion who's been to Worlds, semi-finals a bunch of times and has had actually quite a decorated career. All what Kira did is go, but compared to Knight, he is shit, isn't he? Which is kind of fucked up. So being as you actually, one, your job is actually to do a great job waxing lyrical about good players, but give me the upside of Yagao. What's Yagao really good at now, Mira? Give me I don't want it to just be negative. What's he really good at?
He is a really good facilitator at like finding extra angles into a fight. I think alongside the rest of the team, he is. When you see an engage that happens while Yagao is involved with it, he pretty much always has the perfect timing for it. I don't think Yagao is the person you want to be relying on for perfect damage. That's obviously a downfall of him. But if you want him, God, is it too weird to say that he's like the LPL high? Is it weird to say that? Where he's the person who knows when the fight needs to start and he'll all in with it. He's not necessarily going to have the best KDA and the best numbers. I think he's really talented at using globals on stuff like Talir, which has come back into meta recently. I think he's normally pretty good at kind of sitting in the pocket and looking for the big plays. That's typically what you're expecting out of him. And he'll always be the player to drop a wave to make a play happen somewhere else. Like, he's not... I think that's, sometimes younger... flashy mid laners, they'll never drop a wave and they'll end up late to the play. Yagao is pretty much the guy that's always on time for every play. The question is, whether he's going to have the perfect execution of it. That's been a bit thereabouts, but I think what I'd be really interested to see now is if he could kind of recapture some of his previous playoffs forms where he has actually been able to push some of the top mid laners alongside having that perfect timing. He's been a player which, look at MSI last year. He gave Chovy a really hard time in that series. You look at some of the previous playoff series he had. He was bodying, Xiaohu last year in spring. He's given some really good games to Knight in the past too. That's what I'm waiting to see if JDG can kind of like capture that again, because there is a bit of a difference between like Yagao's baseline level and then when he steps up for the big game.
Yes. Come on, Kira, then. You must have another angle on this.
It's not. The problem is it's not that Yagao is like a bad player. He's not. He's actually like, see if Yagao was to play in like the NA, like as like obviously as a Westerner or like an EU, we would find like a lot like more positives. The problem I always have with like Yagao, right? Okay, is that like there's like an expectation of like what you can be doing with like leads and like resources. I'll give you a good one, okay? Like, watch Yagao play something like Jace in the LPL last year. It isn't like Scouts Jace and it ain't like Knights Jace. It's a very like different style of like Jace. And a lot of people just say like different when it's like it's more categorically like bad. The great thing about like Yagao is he lives up to like the adage that I respect of like know thyself. Yagao doesn't try to pretend to be anyone but the player like he is. And on like select picks, he's like one of the best players in the world. So like, for example, on like AP LeBlancs, Zoe's, these types of things, he's probably one of the best Zoe players I've ever seen. It's just he has like failures. So like, for example, say for a long time now, like laning in like terms of mid lane hasn't been like the most like die-hard like thing. It's actually been somewhat, you could like split it like evenly. If like those things become more and more like apparent or like important, Yagao becomes more and more like of a detriment to like his team. Like, but for this team here, well, like JDG, he's like a good fit because him and Kanavi have historically always worked like very, very well together. The good thing you can say about like Yagao is like he allows you like a flexibility in terms of like playing in terms of like pick order for like draft and stuff. You could hide like jungle like picks behind because Yagao will quite happily blind or like open pick into lots of matchups that like other like mid laners would just say no, I'm not going to like do that because of like X, Y, and counter pick. He'll like blind into it and then Kanavi will get his like jungle counter pick. The other one is like Mimir was talking about dropping waves, but this was like a JDG strategy of old with when Zoom was on the lineup, was if you have like accelerated like jungle picks that require like high concentrations of farm, like the Olaf of yesteryears, like the Belveth, stuff like that, Yagao will actually allow his like jungler to like farm like the wave on his like absence. So I think there's like a lot of things. He has like a very, very good like fit for like the team. And it's not so much that he has like Yagao has actually like spent very, very like time as like a poor or like bad like player. He's actually like overall very good consistency. And so the fact of like he has like a lot of like accolades and he has all of like the trophies of like an extremely elite like player. He just like the actual like watching him in the game does not correlate to like those.
Wasn't it the running joke for a while that even though, his debut when was his debut? 2018 or something like that. How many years did it take him to get an all-pro team? Like it took him until like
ages, yeah.
I think was it 2022? Was that his first one where he's on one of the all-pros at all? It might have even been last year, but like that was one of the running jokes with it, even the Chinese community is like, well, there's you go. Individually, he's not exactly going to get the accolades, but he's there for the team. And that was kind of like that's Yagao again. But like, I think actually last year he steps up really well. As we said, internationally he had some pretty good games. I think that his champion pool perfectly aligned with what happened last year in terms of like the Annie and the Nico being great engage picks for him. I actually think that's been a skill set that's really come out in mid lane more in the last year or so. Where it's not just being sat there and dealing damage as a mid laner. You can do that, of course you can, with stuff like the Azir and Orianna, sometimes they can do that. But then also, there's a huge contingent of engaging mid laners, where actually you need to be part of the big play, and you're the first one into the fray. And I think that actually Yagao is one of the better mid laners at doing that. And that's what's kind of like elevated him from being, a good mid laner to being actually, he is worthy of being on one of the top echelon teams.
By the way, I was just looking it up there, and as far as I can tell, at the moment, I've only just got to 2022. It looks like you're right. It looks like it's not until. Let me see if he actually does it in the
long
summer.
time.
Did he get there in the summer finally? Let me just double check this one. I want to see if he actually ever made it.
He made it onto like the second or third at some point.
Right, maybe
he's never
he did
made
then.
first.
But yeah,
like,
shockingly, when I looked, even in the era where, if people don't know, this is the era when he's going to Worlds every year and he's winning the LPL and he's in the finals all the time. The problem is, like, this is what's brutal. Look, I get normal. If you when you said that initially, I thought it's logical, right? Because if you think about the LPL, you've got fucking Knight, Rookie, Scout, like Doinby, I can keep going, Jiaohu, but it's not just that. In the times he's not making it, even 4-4 makes it a couple of times. Little old 4-4, mate, that actually implies on some weird level, even though I know, they're a popular team, maybe people just don't fuck with Yagao in the LPL, and it's bizarre, though, because I have to say, I always thought they were always very charitable to people like Doinby, who had the unique styles of playing, weren't always at the time trying to smash lane to win game. That's actually bizarre. I would have normally it'd go the other way. You'd think because of how successful JDG is, he'd automatically got at least a third all team or something. That's wild, mate. That's actually fucking bonkers.
Here's a good one actually for you, and this is a good example of one of the the good and bad things about Yagao. Remember me, you, and Jensen were on the show, Thorin, on BLG before Tabby arrived, and all they had was their own players and the assistant coach's ability to figure out the game. Right? They were dog piss. They were not a good team whatsoever. But the minute Tabby showed up and gave them an idea on how to play the game supposedly, and the vision, and Yagao started executing on that vision consistently over and over again, not giving a hoot, and it resulted in them being one of the most dominant regular season, most dominant non-winning.
It is the most dominant regular season LPL.
That's what I'm saying.
15-1 last
season.
Yeah.
So they were an unbelievable for a team that didn't win. They're one of the best teams to have not won the LPL, right? Again, the preface of it is he is taking step back to do it as to enable June, to allow Elk to play into the game, to allow Ben to carry on the split push isolated 1v1 picks. So I actually think what's really, really crazy is, even though a player Scout or Rookie probably are much better than Yagao, if your vision is to enable Kanavi and for Kanavi to be your primary best player, Yagao might actually be the best fit, particularly if you're familiar with them inside the org. I'm just kind of interested in see where Yagao's going to go forward without Zoom or Tabe. Obviously, as Naimira was saying, they've got Mafa, but they're also one of the teams that's only played 3 games. So they've 3 series, so they've not played a lot of mega sample, and obviously they've the marquee matchup, which I think is week 5, where they play BLG. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward. But another good thing is from the way we look at the balance changes in that right now and the way that the low meta's going, like it does look like it'll continually suit Yagao. Like it doesn't look like it's going to like change to be something that's he can't play. So there's that moving forward as well.
By the way, I've actually looked it up. His first ever time making All Pro was last summer when Asnemir appointed. Essentially, for him to once make third team All LPL, his team just had to have checks notes the most dominant split ever. And like, bro, what would he have to take to like be first team? Like, he's never allowed it. Apparently, like
when it comes to like LPL to some extent also goes. I guess this is kind of like across the board, but like there is a certain level of you favor the flashy players with the one with the big screen. It's like the time honored thing. It's like, oh, who's getting the player of the game in this LCK or LPL series? It was the person who got the triple kill or something like that. Is it really the person who's putting in the legwork or in terms of setting up the map and looking for these side lane angles, something like that? No, not really, because that's not sexy. And Yagao has had a couple of like quite high profile blunders as well at points. There was like, God, was it the last time he faced Faker at Worlds back in whenever it was,
2022 or whatever, yeah, 2022
like that. Like he got blasted by him, and like there's been a couple of high profile series where he's just gotten blown out. But yeah, the sad thing is that I think that's kind of overshadowed the actual legwork which this guy does. Like he consistently is bringing a lot of value to the teams that he's on, especially from last year as well.
So yeah, actually, that's a good point he makes there, Kira. And as recently as 2022, Yagao was getting wrecked by Faker. So obviously, I mean, that is unacceptable. I agree. So
yeah.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.